Hello. Welcome back. I am so excited to be back. It's been a long time coming. I hope you're ready for some exciting videos. I have tons of ideas and I'm just super excited to be filming again. It's been a while. It's been a long while. So I figured there's no better way to get back into the swing of things than talking about some of my all-time favorite books. So these books are my God tier books. That's a 6-star book, even greater than a 5-star book. I plan on doing a 5-star recap of the first quarter pretty soon, so you'll be able to see all those books, but these books are the books that are even higher than that. They are everything to me. These are books that really made me feel something and really make me excited when I think about them. They ripped my heart out and they stomped on it and then they sewed it back up and gave me a kiss on the forehead. I love these books with everything that I am. So I went through my story graph and I made a list of all of the 6-star God tier books that I have read within the past year. So I started at the beginning of 2024 and all the way up through now March 2025. So it's a good stack of books and I can't wait to talk about them. So let's get started. So the first book I want to talk about is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I had heard so many people talking about this book. I just had a great big feeling that I was going to love it, and it's so true. I love it. This book, I was sobbing at the end, like full-blown tears streaming down my face. I adored this book. Happy tears, don't worry, happy tears. But it's so good. So basically the premise is there's this woman named Clementine. She inherits an apartment from her aunt, and this apartment is kind of magical. So sometimes when she comes back, this apartment is 7 years in the past. And one day when she returns home, she sees this man living there named Ewan, and just everything ensues. Obviously, this is a lovely romance. It's contemporary, but there's magical realism in the fact that it travels back in time. And she basically discovers a lot about herself and they fall in love. And it's just a really touching, beautiful story. So the next books are actually a series, the series as a whole. It is the Part of Your World series by Ali Jimenez, starting with Part of Your World. Then the second one is Yours Truly, which my friend is borrowing right now, so I don't have a physical copy to show you. And then the third one is Just for the Summer. So these books are just incredible. If you're looking for a romance that's just going to make you feel things even more than just the feeling of love, if you're gonna want to feel characters growing and changing and evolving, you're gonna love these books. So the first one, Part of Your World by Ali Jimenez. So Part of Your World is about the main character. I believe her name is Alexis, and she is a doctor in kind of like a big city scenario. So she is in a situation where she goes and she visits this small town. There she meets the main male character, Daniel, who is a carpenter, and he lives in this small town, and he's very involved in this small town, so like everybody knows him, and he, you know, doesn't want to leave. So it's them falling in love and kind of dealing with all the repercussions of the fact that they're from two very different worlds, and it's that romance combining. They're finding themselves, and Alexis is kind of dealing with the idea of, does she stick with everything that she's always known in her life in the city with being a doctor, or does she follow her heart and stick with who she loves and what she loves? So this story is just a wonderful story of a woman kind of finding herself and realizing what she wants in life. And there's also an epic, amazing romance to go along with it. The next book in the series is Yours Truly, and this one, I think if I had to pick, is my favorite from the series, but obviously they're all God tier, they're all incredible. Yours Truly is about another doctor, and her name is Brianna, and she is kind of going through a really rough time in her life. She's getting divorced, and her brother is going through a medical issue. So her brother is looking for a kidney transplant, and that's something that she's really struggling with and dealing with. And then we meet the main male character, Jacob, and Jacob is one of my favorite MMCs of all time. I love him. I've never felt as seen as I feel whenever I was reading this book. He struggles with anxiety, and as somebody who struggles with anxiety, I think that the depiction of his anxiety was so real and so realistic that it really, really spoke to me. So the two of them are kind of dealing with their feelings, and they get off on a bad foot. So she has a really negative opinion of him because of kind of a misunderstanding. And he writes her a letter, and then they kind of go back and forth writing each other letters, and they fall in love that way. And it's so incredible. I highly, highly, highly recommend this one. Then we have the third one, Just for the Summer, and this one follows Emma and Justin, and they kind of both have this feeling and this situation where after somebody breaks up with them, then the next person that they meet is the love of their life. So Justin, is that his name? Yeah, Justin. I don't know why my brain just went empty for a second. Justin posts online about this situation, and she sees it, and she's kind of like, okay, let's come up with this deal together where we will date each other, and then when we break up, we will each find our people. So they end up doing that, and obviously things don't go as planned. It's a romance. It's so, so good. You'll fall in love with the characters and kind of see the struggles that they go through, and how they kind of have to find themselves and find out what their relationship is going to be. So the next book on my list is The Road of Bones by Demi Winters, and also The Kingdom of Claw by Demi Winters. This is the first and second book in an epic high fantasy series, romantasy, but it definitely leans more heavily on the fantasy side of romantasy. So it's definitely like a fantasy romance versus a romance heavy fantasy. It's definitely a romance heavy fantasy rather than a fantasy heavy romance. I don't know if I'm making any sense. Basically what I'm saying is that the fantasy is a huge part of these two books. So in Road of Bones, we meet the main character. Her name is Scylla, and she's been sentenced to death. Her and her father have been sentenced to death by the queen, and so they're kind of living their lives on the run. They go from town to town. So basically they get to a point where they're going to leave this one town, and on their way out, essentially her father gets murdered, and she's right there. She watches her father get murdered. So now she's on her own. She has to escape on her own. So she escapes into the wilderness, traveling on the Road of Bones. And while she's on the Road of Bones, she meets this band of Viking warriors. This is a heavily inspired Viking romance. So she meets these Viking warriors, and they are just incredible. You will fall in love with all of these Viking warriors. They're called the Blood Axe Crew, and they basically go around and they fight battles, and they have tasks that are given to them that they have to complete, and they're just essentially these really mighty warriors. So we see Scylla kind of con her way into traveling with them, so she gets protection until she gets to the town that she needs to get to. So we just kind of see her traveling on this journey, interacting with them, obviously finding love and romance. And in the second book, the world just completely opens up, and you'll fall even more in love with the characters. Oh my gosh, it is so good. The twists and turns. This is my favorite fantasy that I read last year. Or did I read it this year? You know, I might have actually read this one this year. I can't remember. It's incredible. It's so good. If you're looking for a really good romantasy, look no further. Road of Bones is where it's at. So the next book I'm going to talk about, actually, I lent out to my grandma, so she has it. She's reading it right now, and it is By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult. Now, this book is really, really good. It explores the alternate reality that maybe Shakespeare was written by somebody who's not Shakespeare. So it focuses heavily on Shakespeare as a person. It kind of throws him under the bus, quite honestly. It makes him seem like he's not an excellent person, but the characters that it does focus on, oh my gosh, it's incredible. It has one of my favorite quotes of all time. I've never had to, like, I don't annotate my books, but this book has a quote near the end where I had to take out my pen and annotate it, and I wish I had the book so I could share it with you. When I get the book back, I will definitely share it with you, but oh my gosh, it's just so incredible. So it follows Amelia in the 1500s, and she wants to become a playwright, but obviously she's a woman, so it's not really possible for her to be a playwright. So she starts writing under different names, one of them being William Shakespeare. And so it's her experience kind of writing these books or these plays, and how it affects her because she's not getting any of the credit for it. Meanwhile, we have a second character named Melina, and this is taking place in present day, and she's a descendant of Amelia. So she is writing a play about Amelia's life, kind of bringing forth the idea that maybe she wrote as Shakespeare. So it's kind of exploring that. It's really a good story about womanhood and what it means to be a woman now and back in the 1500s, and it just does an excellent job. It really, like, I cried and cried and cried when I was reading this book. So if you're interested in historical fiction at all, I definitely recommend this one. The next book I want to talk about is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Now, I've been seeing this book get hate online, and I'm here to tell you that they are wrong. They are wrong. This book is so good. So good. I haven't read a romance that was just this fun in a really long time. This is the type of god tier for me that's just pure vibes. It is so, so good. It's one of her spiciest books yet, and it's spicy. It's so incredible. So this book follows Scarlett, who is a diver. She's a really good diver, but she's recovering from a shoulder injury. So it's kind of her getting back into the diving scene when she meets Lucas, who is a swimmer. And he's an excellent swimmer, like Olympics level. Like, he's really, really incredible. But the two of them get involved with each other, and Scarlett is not looking for anything serious. And so it's Lucas kind of like making her fall in love with him, and it's so good. The way that he cares for her and protects her, it just will make your heart sing. It'll make your heart sing. You'll get flutters in your stomach. It is so, so good. Plus it has the whole college athletes thing going for it, which I'm always into. I love a good sports romance, and this one is just super incredible. Like I said, this is a really fun time. I wouldn't say, like, I would not compare it to like an Abby Jimenez romance because those books are more emotional. This book is more vibes and fun. Speaking of sports books, the next book that's on my god tier list is The Favorites by Layne Fargo. Now, this is not the first Layne Fargo book I ever read. The first one I read was They Never Learn, and I really, really liked that one. I wouldn't say it's god tier, but this one, if you like Taylor Jenkins Reid, you will eat this book up. It is so, so good. It focuses on the main character, Katerina, and she is a figure skater, and it kind of documents her meeting this other man named Heath and her life kind of changing when she meets him. And this book is a love story, but it's not a romance, I wouldn't say. It's really following them in their ups and downs, and they become skating partners and going through skating to falling in love and handling all of the changes that come, and there's scandal that happens. And throughout the book, there's these sections of the book that are told as interviews. And so I listened to this. I did a tandem read. I read this with the audiobook, and it's full cast narrated. So there's pages where it's just like transcript, and you can kind of see the podcast that's being made about this situation looking back, and you can tell like as the story keeps going, it kind of like unravels and unravels and unravels, and you learn more and more and more throughout the story about the characters and things that really happened and things that didn't really happen. And this book is just really, really good. So if you're into sports books at all, and if you liked Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, you're gonna love this. It's just incredible. The next two books I want to talk about are both by Meg Shaffer, The Wishing Game and The Lost Story. These are my most recent books. These are the last two on the list, and I've read them really recently. They're so good. I had never read a Meg Shaffer book before. These are the only two that she has out. I started with The Wishing Game. The Wishing Game is about Lucy, and she is like a teacher's assistant in a preschool, and she has always been obsessed with this author Jack Masterson. And when she was a little kid, she went to the place where he lives. He lives in this kind of idyllic place called Clock Island, and he writes these books about Clock Island and the magic of Clock Island. But he lives on a legitimate place called Clock Island, and when she was little, she escaped there. She went to his house to meet him. And so fast forward, there's a game going on that Jack Masterson is hosting to kind of celebrate the release of his last book, and there's only going to be one copy of this book given to the winner of these games. So he invites her to come back to the island and kind of compete in these games. And it is so heartwarming, so heartwarming. If you love your heartstrings to be tugged when you're reading a book, you gotta pick this one up. It's so good. Throughout it, Lucy is kind of facing her fears, and you see her really, really grow as a person. And there's a little boy in this book that just will tug on your heartstrings and really make you root for Lucy because she wants to adopt this little boy. And it's so, so good. Again, I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I feel like if a book makes me cry, that kind of leads itself to it being on my God tier list. So after I read The Wishing Game, I was like, I need more Meg Shaffer. So I started The Lost Story, and I was like, there's no way that I'm gonna like The Lost Story as much as I liked The Wishing Game. Well, I liked The Lost Story even more. It was so good. So basically, it centers on these two characters, Jamie and Rafe, and when they were little, they were lost in a forest, and they were missing for a period of time, and eventually they came back and they kind of acted like nothing happened. Well, fast forward in time, and Jeremy is now a detective of sorts. Like, he finds missing girls who are lost, and so the main character of this book, Emily, she seeks out Jeremy to help her find her lost sister. And her sister was lost in the same forest that Jeremy and Rafe were lost in years and years ago. So Jeremy decides that he's going to help Emily find her missing sister. So they go back into the forest. And I'm not going to spoil the book, but just know, if you love Portal Fantasy, if you love the Wayward Children series, which that's a God tier series for me, if you love Narnia or anything like that, you're gonna love The Lost Story. Again, it's another one, a tearjerker. I was crying at the end. This book is incredible, and I highly recommend it. So that is my list of God tier books from 2024 all the way through now, March 2025. I love to read, and whenever I find one of those books that really just gets me going, my heart starts racing and I'm tears running down my face, I know that it's a good book that's gonna stick with me for forever. Anyway, I'll see you in my next video. I hope you enjoyed. Bye!